We've spent this entire Advent season not just talking about the four different words, hope and peace and joy and love, but also looking at different stories of brand new birth, of miraculous birth. 3 of them in the Old Testament, 1 of them in the New Testament, the birth of John the Baptist. Parents who longed to have a baby and couldn't, wondered what it was. And we looked at this in light of this passage from Isaiah chapter 43, verses 18 and 19, what it says about God and what God is always doing, and where we might see ourselves in the midst of new birth. Not just in new births of babies, but new births of all kinds. Maybe a new birth in the direction you're going vocationally. Maybe a new birth in friendships and relationships. Maybe a new birth in your own healing and from some of the things that you've carried with you or some of the things that you've actually done and caused yourself. Maybe a new birth in how you're going to handle some things that just aren't going to get better, but you might need to change to handle those things. And so in Isaiah 43, verses 18 and 19, it says, "Forget the former things and do not dwell on the past." It's not a forget that's just like pretend like it never happened. It's not getting stuck. It's not letting it be the definitive answer forever. It's not that there's only one way and that there's only one thing that you are a part of. It's not the only way to see you. It's not the only way to see life. Forget the former things and do not dwell on the past. See, I am God, the great I am, God. I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up to you. Do you not perceive it? We're going to get to that word in just a second. I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland or the desert. It's the idea that between where we are and where this new life happens, there's wilderness or desert. There can be barren places. There can be wild places. And as we've talked through these weeks, each of these people, they needed to recognize that there was a presence of God still with them, that God wasn't punishing them in these things. God was with them in these things. And because other people had seen it as a negative or even had told them maybe they'd done something wrong and that's why God hadn't blessed them with new life, that wasn't true. And the important role that prayer had for many of them in hearing God's voice and communicating with God, what am I supposed to do? That part of navigating that wilderness and that desert space was about preparation. How to nourish or nurture the baby, but how to nourish or nurture ourselves. How to grow in wholeness, how to grow in oneness. The stories spoke also of pain, of what it is to see through our own tears when it feels like the pain will never go away, when the pain will always be too big. And what could happen if I could exchange believing that I could go somehow forward in peace through the tears. Not because I'm going to pretend like it never happened, not because I'm going to just get stronger, but because the tears aren't the final answer. The pain isn't the end point. It doesn't have to be the decider. Of what it means for us to be patient and the temptation that we have to try to make things happen our own way and failures that we cause in the midst of it that just cause greater pain, only to find that sometimes the very things that we think we laugh at because it's now ridiculous. We've tried and failed. It will never change. It could never be different. That those are the very things that at some point will become the joyous laughter of see what God did. And how even in our last story this past Sunday, silence. Silence as we navigate, not really knowing. So stop talking about it as if you know. Quit trying to explain it away. Observe more. Look more. Watch more. As you nourish and nurture, as you prepare, as you begin to work through the pain, as you try not to get impatient and don't jump in there, but even if you do not let the failures get in the way, that for all of us moving forward now, from Christmas to New Year, of walking into a brand new year in a brand new way, more than resolutions or other things like that, of that God is bringing new life. This is what God constantly does. And that it comes out of wild places and barren places, including us. And it comes even in the midst of us failing, and even when the pain has felt too big. And it has something to do with not just flash and it happens, but changing us and preparing us and doing something else. And all of this is part of God pouring His love into us That new life, that new way of life, that new position, that new place, that new person, that new thing, that whatever it is, helps us then impact many who participate in that new life too. On Christmas Eve, we saw a different kind of impossible birth. Not to an old old woman who'd never been able to be a mom, but to a young woman as this miraculous light of the world comes. And today, we look at a story, again, that is usually focused on January 6th and the idea of Epiphany, this picture of moving towards a new birth, but these magi are not a couple who has not been able to have a baby. They're not this young woman and her soon-to-be husband and this miraculous thing God has said to do, but they are looking for that birth. And it's shifting for them. And what we're going to see in them is this word, see. Like, before we get there, the Isaiah passage, the word I skipped past was, do you not perceive it? Do you not see it? Do you not look for it? What does it mean to change the way we see? What does it mean that the main point is not that we see the light, it's how the light changes how we see everyone and everything? Do we see our circumstances anew? Do we see the possibility for new life in us? Do we see a God who loves us and is walking through us, even if the worst parts of it and the pain never goes away, and even if it's through tears? And so I want to look at the story, and I want you to look for two things. One, can we just get straight on some of the chronology and the language that sometimes we just kind of have had so slammed into us many a times on many a Christmases that maybe we haven't seen it the way the story's actually told. And two, how is this story actually our story? How could it be? Look with me at Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. It says, after, interesting word, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Not before Jesus was born so they could be there on that night. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." So, just quickly to make sure we're on track here, it seems as though Jesus gets born in Bethlehem. It seems as though, related to that, a star rises. It seems as though when that star rises, there's some people who seem to be looking, who seem to be attentive. They're trying to see when no one else is really seeking. And they see the star, and that moves them to make a decision. Where should we go to find out more? Like, we see a star and we associate it with there's supposed to be some leader, some ruler. We have to be careful with these words king, as if we think of them as an exact title, as opposed to a translation of the word for ruler or leader. Herod is the current leader of Judea, of the Jewish people, and he's a tyrant. There's this idea that there's going to be a king or leader or anointed one or ruler, somebody who's going to raise up and lead in the Jewish tribe. But in the midst of this is a group of people who are looking when nobody else is looking, and they see the star, and in their mind, what is the wisest thing to do is to head to Jerusalem, the big city, the religious city, the set-apart city, to find some answers there of where we might turn to find out more about why this star rose in the sky. The star didn't lead them to Jerusalem. The star inspired them to get started. And their logic was, let's get to Jerusalem, because if anywhere, that's where there'd be somebody who can tell us more about the Jewish king who was born, or the Jewish ruler to be. Verse 3, when Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. Now, again, part of it is just being careful the way this is actually written. Messiah is the word for anointed one. But when we put the word "the" next to it, every one of us keeps thinking, oh, no, the ultimate Messiah. No. These people in Jerusalem at this time, they're looking for anointed one or anointed ones. They're looking for rulers who would step up. They're looking for leaders who might help the Jewish people restore their strength, overthrow Rome. They're looking for a lot of things that aren't the definition of Messiah you may have in your head. And what's disturbing is they didn't see the star. So there's word on the street. This caravan of people from somewhere else, from the east, they've come and they're asking a question. We saw a star that we thought marked something significant. What do you guys think about it? And they're starting to scramble. Well, we don't know. Well, some of us are excited. Some of us go like, oh, there was a star. Maybe something's going to change. We thought that stuff would never change in our lifetime. Maybe something's going to change. Others may feel the threat. What do you mean that there's somebody special born? Didn't happen in any of our households. We're all the special people. So how could that be? What's going on? For some, they're put on the spot. Because King Herod, he turns to the people who should have an idea, the experts in the field. What do you guys know about this star? And what do you know about a place where it might happen? And what might be? And their answer isn't because they're all standing in the room and everybody knew, ooh, everybody knows Bethlehem, and let's just, obviously, let's all yell that out. They went searching. All right, well, we have the law, we have the prophets, we have the stuff. We're going to look. Where might we find cities? Where are there cities related to one day a ruler being born? Where are there cities related to one day something happening? What could be the city? Which city could it be? Because we didn't see the star. We're in trouble for that already. We're worried maybe. We're excited maybe. But where could it happen? It says in verse 5. In Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. And they're going to ultimately find something in the prophet Micah's scroll. In chapter 5, what we associate with verses 2 and 4, but you, Bethlehem in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Shepherd is also a word there that doesn't mean somebody who's going to shepherd literal sheep, but is a name for the kind of leader who governs. The quote does not say Messiah in it. It doesn't say the Messiah in it. It's not a prophecy of the exact thing that is going to be easily determined and then defined later in Christianity. And it doesn't need to be. What's happened is there's a group of people who aren't even Jews, but their eyes are open. They're waiting for something new. They're looking for something to come. And when they see this light, this star, it starts something in them. Something leaps in then, and they decide to scramble together. They may tell each other, or they may have seen it together. They have already been kind of a community, but if not, they assembled a community. And they decided it's important enough that we're going to get up from here, and we're going to go, and we're going to look into it. We're just going to put life on hold, and we want to figure this thing out. This matters to us. And they head to Jerusalem, because that's the wisest place for them to go. They ask the most powerful person. He accesses the greatest experts for the ones who should be able to tell the story and explain to it. And the Magi, these wise people, these seers, not kings. We celebrate it as Three Kings Day. We've talked about it, but there's no evidence that these people are in some ways governing some geographic area. Instead, that they somehow have connected astrology and history and theology and hope, and they're looking for new life. They're looking for God to spring something up. And so they come to the logical place, to the logical person, and they get an answer in a logical group, and it's pointing them towards Bethlehem. Verse 7, then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I may go and worship him. 9. After they had heard the king, they went on their way. And the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. It appears at this moment the star surfaces again. Like, we have no evidence that the star got them to Jerusalem or that they could see the star when they were in Jerusalem. But after they spent their time in Jerusalem asking for help and seeking a place, and they began their path towards Bethlehem, which is help that they needed, the star becomes the bright light in their life again, the direction again. Not to get them to Bethlehem, but where in Bethlehem? Where is this child located? How might it be? What we need to kind of see here as we think about ourselves is, if you, looking into this next year, are looking for, how am I going to cope with this thing that has happened to me? How am I going to make it through this next season? How am I going to seek forgiveness, give forgiveness? How am I going to get that new relationship started? Or how is it that I'm going to restore that relationship that's been broken? What am I supposed to do with my vocation? What do I want to do with my other time and money and effort? What is the new thing that I'm going? As we do that, it's not wrong or bad. As a matter of fact, it can be very wise that once the spark of the light of the world starts something in you, that you turn to experts, or that you have to. Medical experts, mental health experts, those who write books, those who talk about stuff, relationship experts, business experts, to find some information, to find knowledge that might help you navigate what it is to prepare, to work through your pain, to patiently move in the direction of what's going to be new. They can offer knowledge. But what we're going to see in this story is there's also a degree of wisdom, of discernment. Because the people who are offering them knowledge are not starting at the same place. They haven't seen the star in the same way. They don't have the same agenda inside. They don't have the same perspective. Now, hear me super clearly. This is not a message that says, don't listen to doctors, trust God. That's not an either or. Don't ever pay attention to business people. They don't probably believe in Jesus. They might have great wisdom in how to be masters of their business. The idea is not to dispel knowledge. It's okay to seek knowledge. Go to Jerusalem, talk to King Herod, and get what his experts have to say. But hold it with open hands. Because although it might give you the idea that Bethlehem is the next path, where in Bethlehem, how in Bethlehem, might still be a message from the light of God that is directing your path. It's a both and. It's affecting how you see. These are seers who have seen a star, who have a hope for new life, who went to see what they could find out and grab some knowledge. But all the knowledge shouldn't be taken as the pure truth. All the knowledge may not fully apply to them. It is a balance of that knowledge, whatever it may be, and a guidance from God as to how I navigate what I now know. And so you have these wise people, these magi, and they're on their way to Bethlehem. But the more they travel to Bethlehem, the more the star, not the knowledge that it's Bethlehem, the star, the communication of light from God, is giving them direction in a unique way to say, how do we get there? Not just where do we go? Keep reading. I'll reread verse 9. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. They were saturated with joy. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream, now here's God communicating in a further way. Having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. See, it wasn't just about worship. It wasn't about finding the light child and coming and having a worship moment. It was that the valuing of this child, the valuing of the birth and what it could mean, took them to a place that changed the way they saw everything, so it changed the route that they were going to take from that moment on. They couldn't take the same route. Now, there's the backstory of how devious Herod is and all those kinds of things. But for our sake, it's not about the people that we seek knowledge from being bad or evil or devious. They're just not equal or just not total in directing us when God is also with us and in us and for us and giving us some sense of direction. And so the Magi speak of wisdom, not just knowledge, but discernment. Not just where, but how. Not just why, but in light of the light. And so for those of us who want to journey, who need to journey, figure out how to navigate, for those of us who are pouring out in prayer, God, will you just nourish and nurture something in me so that I could be more prepared for what's next? Will you pour your love into me so that I don't just fill up with joy, but it spills out and there's joy, there's hope, there's peace? Will you help me navigate some of the things that will never allow me to stop the pain or the tears? But in the midst of the pain and the tears, I become different and navigate the new life that I now have for as long as I get to have it. That this is what you do, God, that if we're living life, there's going to be wilderness, there's going to be barrenness, and you're going to be bigger than those things. And you're going to be with us in those things. And so you're going to direct our paths, and we're going to make as wise a decision we can to get the knowledge that we can, to get the expertise that we can, to get the help where we can. We're going to journey not just alone, but with our own little caravan of people when we can and where we can trust people. We're going to let friends in, and they're going to pray with us. We're going to ask people who have been through it before. We're going to seek out people that maybe we'll never meet, but we're going to gain from their wisdom. But we're also, more than anything, going to rejoice and be overjoyed that you're the light of the world, and you've called us to be your light. Because your light is not just to be seen, your light is for us to see through. It's how it changes how we see ourselves, how we see each other, how we see our burdens, as we see our hurts, as we see our pains. We see through it, and it changes then the path that we walk from that moment on. That we just can't go back. We just can't go where normal people go. And we can't just seek the power, and we can't just seek the knowledge, because what we have is this unbelievable light of gracious love. God, will you help us wherever, for each of us, this is where we are. And we know how to turn to knowledge, and we have banked on some of those things, and some of them worked or some of them haven't. God, let us not turn away from people who can help us, who knowledge that can benefit us, as we figure out how to navigate our physical pains, our disease, our hurts, our emotional and relational changes that need to happen, and where we need to heal. The hopes that we have to accomplish something in the world, do something or be something. But God, will you start with us with your star? Will you help us look for and be perceiving when nobody else is looking? Seeking and willing to get up and go when everybody else is kind of half asleep doing their own thing. Will you help us to go even if it doesn't go in a direct path? Will you help us if our deserts and wilderness even take us to big cities and smart places and powerful people, not just to the woods? But will you help us know in all of this that you are Emmanuel, God with us, that you love us, and because of that, hope and peace and joy and life are possible. Help us now as we find our route to the next season of our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I invite you to take your hymnals, turn to hymn number 165, Thou Didst Leave Thy Throne. Let's stand and sing together.